Hello everybody and welcome to the latest Breakthrough Events webinar hosted by Santander together with Smarta. My name is Matt Thomas. I'm the co-founder of Smarta and your host for this webinar. And I am joined by the brilliant Leigh Ashton, co-founder of the sales platform Sasudi and also the author of the brilliant sales book, iSales.
What an introduction!
Well, it's very truly, and I've known Leigh for a very long time, and I'm delighted that she's our guest for this webinar. We couldn't have anybody better to talk to us about how to nurture sales leads. So we're going to kick off with, I think, what is the question that most fast growth businesses are thinking of, and it's that difficult one of how do you hire the perfect salesperson. I'm sure that sales is the area where there's the highest burn rate of employees, and I'm sure Leigh's going to tell me I'm talking a lot of rubbish now, but certainly from my experience, hiring a great salesperson, they're worth their weight in gold. So Leigh, where do you start when you're trying to do that?
Well, having recruited salespeople for nearly 30 years, I always say that even if someone is really great on paper, and even if they do really brilliantly at the interview, never give yourself a hard time if they don't work out. Because honestly, this isn't scientific, but my experience is it's a 50-50 chance. And if you go into it with that way of thinking, then you can be much more rational about the recruitment process. Now, just another thing that I'd like to say is just because someone has been really great in a previous role doesn't mean they will be really great for you, and vice versa. They may not have been great in a previous role but could be outstanding for you. So the things that I always look out for are attitude. If they've got a great attitude, if they're really good at having empathy, because for me, empathy is probably the number one characteristic. If they can have empathy for the person who is your prospective buyer, that their problems, what they want to achieve, and they've got the drive and they're proactive, then you can teach them the skills. So for me, it's always about attitude. And we use a sales profile with a number of the companies that we work with, and it consistently shows that people that have a good attitude, and maybe they might have low capability skills, actually outperform people who have all the skills. They know how to do it, but have poor attitude, because even if you know how to do something, you still may not do it if your attitude isn't right.
That's fascinating, and I guess it comes back to the kind of the adage that people buy people first. Is that something that you believe, Leigh?
I absolutely do believe it. The connection between those two people, or that group of people, if there are more stakeholders involved in the sale, is absolutely critical. So someone who can get into rapport and be really easygoing and natural, they're good at socialising and interacting with people. They're the kind of skills that you need to look for. And if you know people around you, you don't have to go to recruitment consultancies, although they do a fantastic job of filtering. If you haven't got the budget for that, just knowing who the person is that you want, what skills they're going to have, what experience, and what characteristics they have as a human being, and actually putting that out there in any way you can, actually is more likely to get you the person that you want.
Okay, and I totally buy into this principle as well. The challenge that I see, though, in many small businesses that are really looking to grow quickly, and they're adding sales staff to their teams and trying to, grow a sales team, is that it's very difficult to harness and keep hold of that spirit and that direction and that kind of I guess, emotional bond with the customer. So what advice would you give to people that are looking to add, very quickly to an organisation and yet keep hold of that, I guess, small business spirit that you have when you're first starting out?
Really, that comes down to the leader, Matt. When you recruit salespeople, you've delegated a task, but it's really super dangerous to abdicate that task. Just because you've brought on a salesperson doesn't mean they're going to, create and reinforce the culture that you've already set, unless they get guidance and leadership from the leader. So I would say, especially in the early days, and I would say definitely in the first 6 months, because for me the first 6 months of any salesperson's career in a new organisation is crucial. It's like setting the foundations. So any business owner that wants to grow their sales team, it's all about spending quality time with them and really looking at what they do, what activities they do, what responses they're getting, what results they're getting, and measuring it in a really strategic way, but also having that two-way conversation. What happened with that call? How did the prospective customer react? Or, looking at how much people are converting and really looking at when that salesperson gets the sale, what's the long-term effect of that? Are customers really happy, or do you get customers cancelling? Or, it's about looking at what happens afterwards, because if you have salespeople that are just about getting the sale, then they may not actually be interested in the long term. And now sales is all about the long term. It's all about the relationship, and it's all about giving value, and it's, people want you to succeed. When people buy from you, they actually want you to be great. They're not looking to you to fall down. So it's us that falls down as salespeople, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I want to come on to the kind of the tracking and the systems that people can use to monitor performance, but also that journey. I'm really interested that you were talking about the kind of how you prepare an environment for a successful salesperson. Kind of what would you do almost to prepare for a new starter? Is there a kind of should there be like a sales blueprint kind of? I'm interested in the training that you give someone when they first start to make sure that they know their product right and they understand their audience.
Well, I always say to people who, particularly business owners that don't like selling, and they say, I'm going to get somebody in to do it, and I say that really is a big mistake, because unless you understand sales and the sales process and how it works in your business, then you can't actually manage someone that you bring in, because you haven't got any framework for them to hook their coat on, if you like. So I would say that it's crucial actually to have some sales process that works for you as a business. So this is how we do it so far. And if you're a director of a business, an owner of a business, and you have had that time, which we all do as business owners, of having to go out there and get those sales, then you know your customers better than any new person coming in. You know what they respond to. You know what they love about your products or services. And so when I recruit anybody, I spend the whole of the first day taking them through our culture as a business, what our outcomes are, and then the whole of the second day I spend on this is the processes that we have so far. But it's always useful to say at this point that those processes are only there as a guide, because everyone's different, and a process that works for Leigh Ashton may not work for somebody else coming in, because we're all different. We've all got different personalities. Some of it might work and some of it might not. And the more we try to get salespeople to actually follow a process that isn't them, the more we cause them to fail.
That's really interesting.
So a blueprint is vital, but it's not, it's not written in stone.
So we'd avoid things like scripts, right?
Yes, for sure. And, think about it. If anybody calls you at home and starts reading from a script, you know it. We all know that. And the best way of putting someone off who's calling you with a script is to ask them a question that might be on the second page, because it throws them completely. So,
and I guess playing devil's advocate more, though, it's very difficult when you started a business, and you and I both know this, right? But when you've started a business and you've poured blood, sweat, and tears into making it what it is, and often established customers over a long period of time, and invested in marketing money, and put everything into a business, to almost hand that brand to somebody else to be responsible for, you can understand why business owners might want to script so that salesperson gets the understanding of what they're trying to sell. Or is there another way, a better way of doing it?
Well, I think the business owner can most certainly tell the new salesperson, this is what I say, and ask them, would that come out of your mouth naturally? Would it flow? Would it sound like you? Feel free to change it in any way that suits your personality. And I think that it is quite frightening to hand over to someone. When you've nurtured a business and you've created a brand, a customer experience, it takes a lot of trust to hand the responsibility of continuing that to somebody that you barely know. So the easiest way of doing that is, start them on easy things, or maybe generating new clients of their own, and just give them easy stuff in bite-sized chunks, not just for their benefit, but also for your benefit as a business owner, because if you can build trust slowly and gradually, you're going to give that person much more flexibility once you think, they've got it. They absolutely have got it. And you do need to let people scuff their knees a little bit. So the more a business owner tries to protect the salesperson, the more they jump in and take over, actually the more they're disempowering the salesperson to develop those skills for themselves. So it's really crucial that you kind of guide and develop their skills without jumping in and taking over.
Superb. You wrote the book I Sell, and I love the strap line for that. Unlock your winning sales mindset.
Yeah.
So Leigh, tell me about a winning sales mindset.
A winning sales mindset is one that allows you to step outside of your comfort zone and do new things, even if they're a bit scary. A winning sales mindset is actually having an understanding of your own mind and what's going on for you, and having a real awareness of those thoughts that could trip you up, like, oh no, this is all going to go wrong, or I can't do this, or I hate picking up the phone, which honestly business owners think that they're the only people that hate picking up the phone. I'm going to let you into a secret. I go to some really big corporate, to train their sales teams, and even they don't like picking up the phone. So a winning sales mindset is, how do you have more control over your mind rather than your mind controlling you? So that, for me, is what a winning sales mindset is.
You got any practical tips to overcoming that?
Yes. You have to be completely committed to personal development. You have to read books or watch videos. You have to take action to work out, did that work or did that not? Am I getting closer to my goal? Did that action get me closer to my goal, or did it take me further away? You have to reflect on everything that you do. I've got a friend who has the most successful construction company, and she is a woman, which is very, very unusual in the construction industry. She's super successful. She's in magazines and all kind of stuff. And she puts her success down to every night on the way home, on her journey, she reflects on the day from start to finish, what went well, and then she congratulates herself for what went well, and also what didn't go as well as she'd liked, and what would she do about it in the future. So in order to do that, you have to have an understanding of your own thinking. So you have to be committed to personal development. It's not just an impact on sales that has. It has an impact on your business. It has an impact on your personal life. Just being more aware of yourself as a human being makes you a phenomenal salesperson.
I'd like to touch on online sales a little bit. So I know there'll be quite a few people that are listening in. And at this point, actually, everybody who is listening, please do leave questions in the questions section below. We will get around to answering your questions. We're on air for a good another half an hour here. Leigh will be available to answer anything that you would like some insight onto from a sales perspective, and I'm very happy to share anything from a content and a sales and a marketing perspective as well from our work with Smarta. So please do leave questions in the questions box below, and we will do our best to answer them. But back to online, Leigh, I would love to kind of hear your insights on how to nurture sales online. And I think that it's a very interesting journey for me that a lot of companies actually make quite a few mistakes. So for me, they work very, very hard in attracting customers to their website, often work very hard to collect some information, be it a name, an email address, a phone number, and then almost always blow that by trying to sell too early. So whilst we're talking about selling today, I'd love your insight from an online side of things about possibly trying to sell too early.
Yeah, there's that old analogy where you wouldn't go up to someone in a bar and say, let's go upstairs and book a room. You just wouldn't do that. And it's the same. You have to woo your customers. So if you're really good at getting people onto your website, if you're really good at collecting names and details, then it's really important that you start to develop that relationship by giving them something of value. Now, I know lots of people put a free report on, and that's a really great way to start the relationship on a good footing, really. But something that is absolutely crucial, and lots of people say this. I know that you and Shah often say this. It's give, and then ask or offer. So it's about what can you give of value, and how. The other thing that's also really important is like the user journey that people have when they reach your website. Whilst we've been researching, we signed up for lots of free trials on online platforms, and you wouldn't believe how many of them didn't get in touch with us until the last day of the trial to say, your free trial is up tomorrow, what are you going to do? Now, that's a really great example of how not to do stuff. So it's really make sure that you are interacting and giving, sending them your blog or sending them pieces of information that you've seen that's relevant to your business. You think, I thought you'd be interested in seeing this. So it's about giving, so they get used to receiving, but also making sure that you let them know what is on offer, because otherwise it's a really fine balance, Matt, because if you get them used to receiving all the time, you're actually not getting them used to buying. So you do have to, in between all the giving, say, hey, we've got this special offer this month, or hey, have you got this issue here that, this might solve your issue. Whatever your product or service is. Look for ways that in between the giving you can offer solutions that solve people's problems so that they get used to buying from you.
Absolutely, and I think that takes us neatly into a question from Veronique Rapetti from the New Entrepreneurs Foundation, who is very much asking us about that I guess new involvement of sales online, and particularly the phrase new sales cycle.
Yeah.
And Leigh, this will be something that you're familiar with your own business. Do you want to quickly tell us what you do with Sasudi?
Sasudi is not launched yet. It's beta launching next month. But what the sales cycle is we attract people to our marketing site where they register and they get a free report. And then every week we do 2 blogs that are giving advice on how to grow your sales in your small business. So so people get those, and we just send a little notice to say this is the blog for today, this is the blog for today for the 2, and then on a weekend we do a little broadcast that says these were the 2 blogs this week. If they're relevant to you, then off you go. And really for us it's all about creating a community. So one of the zones on Sasudi is a community zone where people can ask questions, and there's a whole remit of different user journeys that we've created throughout the platform so people can engage. And the other thing that I think is always really important, and it's not always possible, I know that, and in our case it is to give people an opportunity to use your product or service. So for Sasudi, we give a 60-day free trial so people can actually try it out for themselves before they decide whether it's for them or not, and we don't take any card details. So we're about creating trust. And so I guess our sales cycle is going to be 60 days, but it doesn't mean that it always is. Because if they don't decide, if after 60 days they say, I can't make a decision now, then these are people that might go off and use what they've learned in 60 days and then think, wow, that's been incredible, now I'm going back for more. So everyone's sales cycle is going to be different depending on the product, and never give in if somebody says no straight away. And on a slightly, because I go into corporates and do sales training of teams, there have been some very large organisations that have taken me 3 years to get them to pay for a actual training. I developed that relationship, did free stuff for them, went and did little impromptu talks. So every sales cycle is different. You've got to make it right for you and right for your audience. Does that make sense?
It does, Leigh, and I think your the word that really resonated with me there is trust. And I think, especially on a kind of a new sales model, then and a kind of a software as a service model, that it's absolutely about kind of evidencing, improving, and building trust. And I think there's it almost goes, for me, this is where there's a blur in the online world between content and marketing and sales. And for me, that each of them feeds the other. I think all pieces of content that you generate, I think content is a huge driver in sales, as you've just said that you're doing with Sasudi now, should have a kind of a sales objective to it, whether it's to raise awareness, whether it's to capture an email address, whether it's to then nurture that email address into a trial, whether it's to support that trial and have the best possible experience that you can with the software or the service, to then become a paying customer. And then once you're a paying customer, to continue to engage and support so that you are obviously keeping the highest possible retention rate that you can have. And for me, that's the kind of it's a journey. It's almost a machine that for me, content is a really powerful part of that journey now.
I completely agree with you, Matt. It's all about content now to develop trust. You know, every piece of content that you create says something about you. And it won't resonate with everybody, but it will resonate with the people that you are trying to help. And that's exactly what you want your copy to do. And so, as someone who's been delivering sales training for 20 years and now going into this software as a service world, you know, it's absolutely crucial that the content on Sasudi matches what we deliver as people, and so, you know, creates that same engagement. So it's been a really long journey for us to make sure that it does that, but we know it's absolutely critical that when people join Sasudi to help them with their sales, from the moment they start paying, we have to keep adding more and more content. It's not about just creating a website and then getting people to pay and then thinking you've done your bit, because people won't stay without really good content. And I mean, you know that better than anyone.
Absolutely, and I think it's an interesting jump to our next question, which is from Raina Da Costa from BizLaw UK. And Raina asks, for the service sector with B2B sales, how much spend would you recommend for marketing to support sales, or can just word of mouth and networking be enough? I'll bring you in, Leigh, but for me, word of mouth comes from building trust and delivering great quality services, which for me, whilst the product and the service are very, very important, that the quality of that is supported by great content again. And whilst networking is important, and I advocate getting out and meeting as many people as possible, it's kind of generating relationships, which I think is most important. And the best possible way to do that is to deliver high quality, personalised services. And I really believe that whilst I would always advocate marketing and again content being at the heart of it, I would think about two different types of content and do two different types of marketing spend. So one spend puts you, whilst the product and the service are very, very important, that the quality of that is supported by great content again. And whilst networking is important, and I advocate getting out and meeting as many people as possible, it's kind of generating relationships, which I think is most important. And the best possible way to do that is to deliver high quality, personalised services. And I really believe that whilst I would always advocate marketing and again content being at the heart of it, I would think about two different types of content and do two different types of marketing spend. So one spend puts you in front of the right customers, and the rest of it is about nurturing those leads once you have them to become existing customers. I see so many businesses spending all of their budget on leads that they never convert, and it proves to be a total waste of money, and they actually blame the marketing activity for not giving them the high conversion rate when it could be the way that they're trying to convert those leads. Leigh, feel free to answer, but also if you've got anything to build on my point, then please do.
Yeah, you know, I agree with you. I think that having been, you know, my business is a B2B service business that I've had for a really long time, and I think networking used to be the only way that you could meet people, but when the internet came along, it changed everything. So developing relationships online is a really great way of networking. But, you know, like Matt said, if you're delivering really great quality, whatever it is that you do, then always ask for referrals. When you've done something really well, and at the time that you've done it really well, ask people who else do they know that would be interested in what you do. Because when people are really delighted, that's the best time to ask them. But going back to your marketing spend question, I have a rule when it comes to spending on marketing, is that it doesn't matter how much you spend as long as it creates more sales value than the spend. So, you know, if you spend £100 and it only generates £80 in sales, then it's not working. But if you spend £100 and it generates £200, then I think spend £1,000 and get £2,000. So for me, it's not the level of spend, it's the level of return on that spend. But always test it out in low numbers. Spend £100, see what happens, and then if it generates the leads, look at how you convert those leads, because Matt's absolutely right. If you are great at getting introductions, leads, but you're not great at converting them, then that just means that you just got to get better at that bit. So stop spending marketing spend on stuff until you know how to convert it.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, and from experience in our businesses as well, is that converting at a low level is often a great way to encourage customers to spend more as well. And I need to be very, very clear here that I don't mean offering the same services that you would charge more for a lower cost, because it's very, very difficult to encourage people to pay more after they've paid little. What I do mean is encourage them to pay for a lighter, shorter period of time to build some trust. So we will quite often bring leads in at a low cost and then nurture a percentage of them up to have been a higher paying customer. But it really does depend on your model there. But that can be one very cost-effective way of encouraging a higher percentage of people to pay to play.
Yeah, it's very, very hard to get somebody to spend a lot of money with you cold. So having some low-cost products to get them used to buying from you is a really great model if you can do it. And, you know, we used to run like free taster sessions, which were completely free to like high-level sales directors, and then we might run a small workshop and then get them onto a big program. So if your model allows for that, then absolutely getting a low-cost product to entice them to buy from you and develop that trust factor again is a really good idea.
We have another question. It's from Michelle Dowling. Everybody do put your questions in. I want to try and answer as many of them as possible. You've got a questions box down the bottom of your screen. So Michelle Dowling runs New Addington magazine. And
hi, Michelle.
Hey. Michelle asks, what's a acceptable amount of time to revisit a customer that was not initially interested, and when does no mean no?
Interesting question. It depends on the reason that they're saying no, because I always say that if you're in a sales situation, there's only two answers that you really want. The first one is yes, that's the best answer, but the second one is no, and the third one is maybe. Because when people say maybe, it could be a no, but they haven't got the courage to say no. So I would say if they are saying no, then just agree with them, knowing what you do. If it's to get people to advertise in the magazine, I would say, okay, so it's no for now. When can I get back to you to check out whether the situation's changed? And just keep in touch with them from time to time. There is a stat, this is quite an old stat, and I need to revisit it actually, but it said it takes on average 7 contacts to get a sale. If you've gone back to that person 25 times, then and they've said no, we're not interested, then don't waste your energy on them, I would say. Sure. But if it's like a few times and you know they are okay with you checking in with them from time to time to see how business is, then just feel free to do that. And remember that staying in touch with people doesn't always mean that you have to visit them or phone them. You can keep in touch with them via email. For people who are what I call low-level prospects, then, you know, sending them something once a month, a newsletter or a how are you kind of communication keeps your name fresh in their mind.
I would add a couple of examples for this. I worked quite closely with Intuit a couple of years ago. They're the makers of QuickBooks cash flow forecasting software and accounting software. Now, they offer cloud solutions now, but back when they were only offering boxed solutions, they would find that their typical new customer purchased their boxed accounting software solution within the first month of them starting a business. It was the kind of thing that you felt you may need, and they targeted people through company registration and company's house. So they would do outbound telephone calls, sell the product. Now, they knew at the point that the product was activated wasn't until 9 months after that.
Wow.
So and so there's a really valuable lesson there that actually a customer needs a product when they need it, and the point that you get your lead mightn't be the point that they actually want to buy. Now, that lesson for me was borne out in some work that we did at Smarta when we were distributing government startup loans. So I similarly would take leads that came through in the month that a company was registered, and we would do outbound sales calls and email sales, encouraging people to apply for loans. And at that point, the conversion level was nowhere near as high than when we'd left it 6 to 9 months at the point where a company was actually beginning to trade, was looking for investment in stock or sales and marketing, actually had a requirement for the cash in. So I think, there's really getting close to your customers and understanding exactly what they need, and when the sale becomes, imperative to them is a real lesson sometimes, and it's not necessarily what you think when you start.
That is so true, and it's really understanding the psychology of the person that you're interacting with. So, when you talked about a winning sales mindset earlier, it's really crucial to understand your own mind, but the more awareness you have of the person that you're interacting with, actually, not only does it allow you to create deeper levels of rapport, but it also allows you to convert more of those leads into sales.
So we have a question from and Barbara, I'm about to pronounce your surname terribly, so I do apologise in advance. It's Barbara Moshagadi, I believe, and she works for Chiswick Buzz. Now, Barbara says that she works for an online TV channel, specialises in providing the community with the latest news and events, and promoting business through video. She says that she's very confident, chatty, and friendly on the phone, and when she gets into meetings, not so much, and doesn't have as many sales from those meetings. So, what advice could you offer for her kind of relationship building and her approach in a face-to-face situation? I guess that really comes down to closing a deal, and I think that's a theme that really will resonate with a lot of people on this call, and especially, I guess, when we're looking beyond the kind of a B2C or a B2B low-level cost deal, but a significant partnership deal. Leigh, what's your advice for closing face-to-face?
Well, I think closing depends on how you open. So if, Barbara, you are going into your meetings and then you are telling the people that you're meeting with all about Chiswick Buzz and, what you do and how great you are at X, Y, Z, and because all companies have stuff that they're really proud of. So if you go in and what I call, if you're saying, well, we do this and we do that, and you tell them all the great things you do, I call that weeing all over the place. And it's what I call selling. So if you are telling the other person what's great about you in the hope that they buy from you, then that's not your easiest path to close. So I think it's really important when you go into any new prospective customer to ask them questions. So you might ask them, how do you get word out about what you do? I mean, I'm not quite sure what Chiswick Buzz is, but it's really, if you think about the problems that you solve and the objectives that you help businesses achieve by having a relationship with Chiswick Buzz, whatever those things are, ask questions around that. So for me, for example, I'll go into a business and I'll say, okay, so tell me what problems you have around sales. Tell me what you've tried so far that has worked. Tell me what you've tried so far that hasn't worked. Tell me what objectives you're striving to achieve. And I ask questions all around the sales development side. And only when I know their story, only when I know what's going on for them, do I absolutely say, okay, so based on what you've told me, these are the options that are open to you. And then I tell them about other people who have wanted the same as them and have got that from buying our services. So it's more about using you language, asking lots of open questions, then matching what they want in your response to what they've said. And that way, when you get to the close, instead of telling them all this stuff that they might be interested in, because they won't be interested in all of it, because as you're telling them what you do, they'll be psychologically putting a tick or a cross next to those things. And for every cross you get, it makes it more difficult to close, and it also opens you up to negotiation, because they're thinking, well, actually, I don't want that bit, so I don't actually want to pay for that. So my advice to you, Barbara, is don't go in and sell. Go in, ask lots of open questions. Then when you have identified what their hotspots are, talk about how Chiswick Buzz will help them get that. And then when they get to the end, you can simply ask the question, okay, so based on, the options that I've given you, which one works best for you? And use closes like that. I've got a great close that I use, but you absolutely must have to have really great rapport when you use it, and that's my 1 to 10 strategy. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being Leigh, please leave the building and never darken our door again, to 10 being Leigh, when can you come in and deliver this training? Where would you say we are? And then they tell me whatever number, and I go, whatever number they say, I say, great, what would make it a 10? And then they tell you what the gap is between, where they are and 10. And then if you can bridge that gap, do it there and then and do the deal. And if you can't bridge that gap, you walk away knowing that absolutely you couldn't have got it anyway.
Great advice, Leigh, great advice. So I have a question from an Elaine Chi-Cat Lung from Natural Skincare London. And Elaine says, I sell skincare and wellbeing products. I don't have any experience with marketing. My online shop is on Google page 13 at present. What is the best way to draw people to my site? I also sell my products in a rented space in St Pancras Station. Then I realised people don't know my brand. I need to do marketing. What is the best way for me? Leigh, do you want to go first, and I'll chip in as well?
Yeah, you do have to build awareness, and if you are looking to build a brand, I think social media is going to be the best way for you. Attract people who are really interested in skincare and wellbeing products. Join other groups where there are those kind of people and start interacting with them. If you've got any kind of marketing spend, then you can do paid advertising on social media. Paid advertising on Google is more expensive. Anything like that, if it's not your game, please get someone to do it, because it's a full-time job. keeping up to date with Google algorithms and paid advertising. So I always say don't try doing that yourself unless you're willing to dedicate lots of time to learn about that. And I think that if you can do that, then you can start to build a brand. But you can do it easily on social media. It is slower, but, you know, you can absolutely. And just as I said before, give lots of value, like start a blog if you haven't got one already about how important it is to use your kind of skincare and to look after yourself to be able to face this modern mad world that we live in.
Completely agree, Leigh, and I think producing some great content that you can push out via your blog onto social media, maybe some videos on YouTube, maybe then promote those videos on Facebook as well. Facebook ads paid for are a great alternative to Google. But for me, I think you need a strategy that moves across the shop and online, which is about nurturing a list of customers that you can keep on going back to. So Leigh's very salient point about needing 7 touch points before someone typically buys works right across your content and your social media marketing as well. So the more content you produce, the richer your Google ranking will be and more people will link to you. So that will improve your SEO out, but that will be a longer-term play. In the short term, think about the social media work that you can be doing, but with a very, very clear objective to collect an email address, a name, and hopefully a phone number. From that point on, you can continue to retarget those customers with value. So it's not just a one-off hit, hoping that they buy the one time that they click through from social media. You absolutely have to capture the lead, then nurture it into a sale. The other thing,
really
Leigh, that
great
I think,
advice.
the one thing, Leigh, I just would love to touch on, I think this is a really good example of it, is, and this applies across many, many industries, is to be very clear about why you're doing what you do and what you're selling to people. So, you know, we don't know lots about Elaine's skincare products, but it won't necessarily be the product that is the answer to the problem that people have, right? It'll be the, you know, whatever else it provides them with, right? It could be great skin. It could be feeling more confident.
That's absolutely true. You know, whatever your skincare does for people, it goes way beyond just a pot of cream, if you like, if it's a beautiful smell. And it's how you feel in yourself. So, and you talk about well-being. So I'm guessing that this skincare isn't just about skincare. It's your why you're doing this is all about giving the person a better state of being. And so I think Matt's really right. Why are you doing this? And then create a brand that is all about that, because the closer your brand is aligned with you as a personality, the much more successful the brand will be. So think about, for you, how do you want to leave people feeling? What do you want to be known for? And then every bit of content that you create must reinforce that.
Thank you, Leigh. Great advice again. We are very quickly coming out of time. I have one question. We can maybe sneak another one in, but really this will probably be the last one. It's from Steve Daniels from Just Right Products UK and Europe. And Steve says, how would you sell safety to people? So I think that follows on nicely from the point you were just making, right? How do you sell safety? So Steve, so his company's called Just Right Products. We don't know exactly what they do. It's why he saves eyesight and in many cases people's lives. So how about safety? How would you sell that?
I'm not quite sure what that means, but when you, if it's safety goggles that is saving eyesight because they're working in an industry where things are flying around, or they might, there's a potential of things flying around. If that's right, my question is, Oh, here we've got a bit more information there. So I didn't word my question right. What I was trying to say.
This is Barbara. So let's carry on with Steve in terms of.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, Steve, without knowing a bit more, but if I were to guess, if it was safety goggles, I'm assuming that you would be selling to the people that own the businesses, and I would focus on pain points that they would experience if any member of their staff were to be injured by something that was happening in the workplace. So you always must focus on the pain points of the person who is buying the product, not necessarily the person who is going to be using the product, if that makes sense. Because it's the person that signs the checks that actually has to make the decision to buy. And in order to get someone to make that decision, they have to see the value in it for them. So I hope that answers your question, Steve, but you can email me afterwards if you want to give me a bit more information.
Thanks, Leigh. And this will have to be the last one. It's a follow-up from Barbara from Chiswick Buzz, and I think that actually the context she's given us is a really nice one for us to finish on. And she wanted us to talk about how actually you maintain a friendly relationship with your partnerships that you're forging. And for me, that is that's the bottom line of every great partnership that I've ever had. Is to be able to build a really good relationship, more than a partnership, with the company and the individuals I'm working with, and to have that great kind of empathy and understanding that you talked about at the very, very start, Leigh. And I think all the great partnerships that I've had have certainly been two-way. I understand that the value that I'm delivering them, they understand that value as well, and they understand very, very clearly how we can both, by working together, get something that is far in excess of the sum of our parts. Leigh, what would you add to that?
Well, I always say the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. Like, you bring something to the table, they bring something to the table, and together you make magic. And for me...
far more succinctly said than me.
I think that for me, sales or a partnership relationship is an act of love. So I think of the other person as like, I really want to serve this person. So what can I give them that absolutely makes their life easier or better or helps them achieve something or takes the pain away? And that's no different in partnerships than it is in selling to a potential customer. For me, it's how can you create that magic together? And if you come from that space of giving, then it creates a sense of giving on the other side, if that makes sense. So for me, it's all about loving the other person. I know that sounds a little bit woo-woo, but that's the way that I see it. That's the way that I see it, is how can I serve that person?
Absolutely, and and Shara and I at Smarta and the work that we do outside Smarta as well, we genuinely have a role, and people think that we don't mean this, right? But we absolutely do, and we have turned away significant amount of money because the balance just hasn't been there. Like, we haven't been the right kind of people to build that relationship and partnership. And you know what? It's hard sometimes walking away from that money, but when it's not there, it's not there. And actually, the time that you'll save will enable you to go and earn more money in an environment where you'll be happier and you'll be more creative, and in the ultimate long term, we'll get better results for all concerned. So I think it's hugely important. We are out of time, but because I don't like to leave any questions on the table, Leigh, I'm going to ask you to answer one more. It's from Michelle Langdon of Novaplex Business Solutions Limited, and she asks very simply, channel or direct sales? I imagine it kind of depends, and we don't know the context, but Leigh, do you want to just give us some top-level thoughts?
It does depend on the business. If you, I think if both work for you, then use both. I'm very much a believer in using as many different options as possible, because if one dips, then you have something else happening. So, for example, if your direct sales dip for any reason, but your channel is still working effectively, your channels are working effectively, then you've limited the risk to some degree. But also you need to look at margins too. So if you get your main profit margin from direct sales and it's enough to sustain your business, then I would put more emphasis on that and make channel your second priority. But you have to work out which one has the biggest contribution to your business, because if the channel is bringing in more business, even though it's a lower margin, it still could be bringing in significant profits. So without knowing more, that's my response.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is difficult to say the context. The only thing I would add, and probably not directly related to channel or direct, is it's that balance between following the money and following where your natural skill set, propensity to succeed and be happy is as well. And certainly at times we've made decisions where we've followed the money and it's ultimately let us down a path that, whilst lucrative, isn't where we're at our best, and so we're not delivering the best service and continuing to grow our business that way. Whilst at others we've been distracted and we should absolutely be following the cash as well. So completely agree, looking at the margins as well. That is us out of time. Leigh, thank you so much for being with us today. Every single time that I talk to you, I learn something, so I'm sure that everybody else has as well. Thank you very much for your time. How can people get in touch with you if they'd like to follow up with any extra questions?
You can email me at leigh@sasudi.com. That's Leigh, Leigh, and Sasudi is SASUDI.com. People often ask me how we came up with that name, and it's the first two letters of sales, support and direction, which all the small businesses I've ever talked to in the last 20 years have all said they would really, really love. So that's how we came up with Sasudi.
Brilliant. Thank you, Leigh. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in, whether you are watching live or following up now. We really appreciate it. The next webinar is on December the 1st, and we will be exploring hiring a COO to make you a better CEO. So a really hot subject, something that I know a little bit about as well, and we'll definitely be in touch with invites to that, so you can register well in advance. And we also have an event on Thursday morning where we'll be looking at building a senior management team, and that's a face-to-face, in-person meeting in Birmingham. Again, we will follow up with an email inviting you all along to that, so any Birmingham-based businesses, please do come along and meet us in person. Otherwise, thank you, Leigh. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll be in touch very shortly. Thank you again to Santander for our Breakthrough Business Events partners. I would urge you to check out the Breakthrough Business Events section on the Santander website. It's packed with advice for fast growth businesses, and it's immensely useful. So thanks again, and we'll be in touch soon.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye bye.
Thanks, Leigh.